Hello everyone, welcome back to another English language video. Today we are looking at the AQA GCSE English language, paper 1, question 3, which is focusing on structure. So the question itself is always the same every single year. So it reads, you now need to think about the whole of the source. Okay, so the whole of the source is looking at the beginning to the middle to the end. So you're looking at the shift from the beginning to the middle to the end. The text is from the opening of a novel. How has the writer structured the text to interest you as a reader? You could write about what the writer focuses your attention on at the beginning of the source. So what is the focus at the beginning? Is it on the setting? Is it on the characters? How do they have a conversation? Does it shift from the inside to the outside? Do they use dialogue? How and why the writer changes this focus as the source develops? And finally, any other structural features that interest you. And this question is worth 8 marks. Okay, so when you look at the question, you should divide it into the following. So that includes the beginning, the middle, and the end. So preferably you want to show quotes from the beginning, one from the middle, one from the end. And when you answer the question, you need to show how the source develops. And in simple terms, you need to show the shift in focus. So the shift in focus could be in the setting, it could be a shift in the time, or it can be a shift in the tense as well. So these are some areas which you can look at for in terms of the shift in focus. Now, also within the question, they mention any other structural features that interest you. So structural features, there are a few that I wanted to go over in today's lesson. So they include the following. Now, like I said, you may not find all of them in the text, but for sure you should be able to identify some of them. So the first one is a narrative voice. The second being a narrative perspective. So is it written in first person or third person? And you need to talk about the impact of that. The climax, so the most intense part or the decisive point within the text. The dialogue. So the dialogue is the conversation between their characters, and how does that interest the reader? Then we have the exposition. So what happens at the start and where the ideas are initiated. Has the writer used an analepsis? So an analepsis, if you don't know, is a flashback, and it's presenting past events that have happened. Prolepsis is a flash forward, again to do with structure. It's presenting the future events. Foreshadowing, very important. What is foreshadowing? Foreshadowing is when you hint of what is to happen. Okay, so you give the readers a clue of what is about to happen. Do we have a motive? So a recurring element in a story. So a particular notion that is repeated throughout. We've got resolution. So a resolution is the solution of the conflict. And then we've got a setting. How is the setting introduced? Okay, do we start inside a house and then does it suddenly transition to the outside of the house into the forest? And then we've got spotlight. So is there something which is emphasized? And ask yourself, how does that interest the reader? Linear narrative style. Are events told chronologically? So are they told in a time order from the early hours of the morning to the afternoon to the late evening? Or is it the opposite, in a non-linear narrative style? So this is where events are not told in a chronological order. And then we have a dual narrative style. So what is that? Again, it's to do with structure. This is where it's told from multiple perspectives, so from multiple viewpoints. And finally, we have a cyclical narrative style. So this is where it ends the way it begins. So how the text begins is the way the text ends. So for example, if they start the extract at the middle of a forest, okay, or in the middle of a forest, and they end the extract in the middle of a forest, that also is an example of cyclical narrative style. So these are all some structural features that you need to be aware of when answering the question. Now, what I wanted to look at is the mark scheme, as it's important for you to identify and look at why and how you need to score the top marks. So for band 4, 7 to 8 marks, what do you need to show? Number 1, your answer needs to be perceptive. So it has to be sophisticated. You need to look at the obvious and the not so obvious points for this question. For sure, it has to be detailed. So make sure when you analyze structure, your answer is detailed. And as we all say, talk a lot about a little. Analyze the effects of structure in detail using original, interesting ideas. Very important. Tell us the effects. What is the effect of using that structural technique? Carefully chosen quotes. So when you choose quotes, don't just pick out any random quotes. Be very selective as you are against time. So you have to be very selective and judicious. Use sophisticated subject words. So like I said before, if the writer has used a flashback, you may want to use the word analepsis. If the writer has used a flash forward, you may use the word prolepsis. These are, again, relevant subject terminology, which you should be using in your answer. Moving on, some top tips in terms of answering question 3 on structure. Select a judicious range of examples. Now, what does judicious mean? You have to be selective with your quotations and pick quotes where you can write a lot about, okay? So this is what we mean by being judicious with your quotations. And secondly, make sophisticated and accurate use of subject terminology. So when you identify the structural features, make sure you are being sophisticated, you are looking at it from different angles as well. And in terms of how to structure your answer, this is a simple template that you can follow. So you may have heard of peel paragraphs. So P stands for point. So what do you have to do here? You make your point when you start your answer. Tell us what effect it has on the writer and how does it create a certain structural feature. This is what you have to do in your point. So that's the first thing you do in your paragraph. Secondly, you have to show evidence. So support your answer with evidence from the text, from the source. Make sure you back it up with relevant quotes. Thirdly is your explanation. Explain how the quote you have chosen supports the point you have made. And finally is the link. Which is when you summarize why the paragraph is relevant to the question. So these are some areas for you to focus on and answer in terms of the question. So you've got point, evidence, explanation, and link. So this is something that you can follow when answering the question. And you're looking to write approximately 3 peel paragraphs for this question. And if you can do this accurately, then for sure you can score yourself 8 out of 8. The main focus is on how we interest the reader. So if you can focus and write an answer tailored towards the reader and how it interests the reader, you should be able to achieve the top marks. And that takes us towards the end of the video. I hope you all have a better understanding of what structure is for the GCSE English language. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe, like and share for more education related videos. Thank you.